All right, let's get into it. Today, we're going to break down the whole menopause transition. I know, it's a topic that can feel really confusing, maybe even a little overwhelming. But our goal here is to change that. We're going to turn all that confusion into clarity so you can feel confident navigating it.
So, let me ask you, are you feeling kind of tired all the time? A little more moody? Or maybe just different, but you can't quite put your finger on why? If you're in your 40s, you might be nodding your head right now. And you know what? You are definitely not alone, and there's a very real reason for what's happening. Okay, so let's dive right in. I think one of the biggest misconceptions out there is that menopause is just this flip of a switch. One day you're not, the next day you are. But that's not how it works at all. It's really more of a journey, a long one, that can stretch out for 8, even 10 years. Think of this as our map. See all those different stages? From early perimenopause all the way to late postmenopause? Understanding this map is absolutely the key to figuring out where you are on the path.
All right, so let's walk through this map. We're going to start right at the beginning, the very first stop, so you can see just how this whole thing usually plays out.
So, where does it all start? For most people, the journey begins right here, in what we call early perimenopause. This usually kicks off sometime in your mid-40s, and this is when those first, really subtle hormonal changes start to bubble up.
So, what does that actually feel like? Well, you might notice your cycle, which was always like clockwork, starts to get a little longer. Maybe getting a good night's sleep suddenly becomes a challenge, or you find it's way harder to lose weight. And here's the really tricky part. You go to the doctor, they run labs, and everything comes back looking totally normal. It can be so frustrating when your body is telling you something's up, but the numbers don't show it yet.
Okay, moving on to the next stop on our map, late perimenopause. This is when those little whispers from your body start turning into shouts that you just can't ignore. So instead of your period being just a few days late, now you might go 60 days or more between cycles. It gets way more irregular. But the real signature of this stage, progesterone levels just plummet, and that has a huge impact on your sleep. At the same time, your estrogen is on a roller coaster, swinging up and down, which is a big reason for those mood changes. All right, this next point is so important. We always talk about going through menopause, right? But technically, menopause isn't a phase. It's a single day. It's that one specific day on the calendar that marks exactly 12 months in a row without a period. That's it. And for most people, that day happens around age 51.
And every single day after that one-year anniversary, that's officially called postmenopause. And just to make it interesting, even that period is split into 2 phases, early and late. Each one has its own unique hormonal environment and, things to focus on for your health.
Okay, so now we have the map. But the big question is, how do you figure out where you are on it? Like, what's your location? Well, there are 2 main tools that can help you pinpoint exactly what stage you're in.
Think of it like GPS. Your navigation system has 2 parts. The first clue is your symptoms. You got to learn to listen to the signals your own body is sending. And the second clue is your labs. That's the hard data that gives you the clinical coordinates.
Let's start with clue number 1, the symptom check-in. Just ask yourself a few questions. How are your mood and energy? Are you really struggling with fatigue? Is falling asleep or staying asleep a battle every night? Feeling more irritable? Does stress feel harder to manage? These are all really important signals. And it's not just mood and energy. Your body gives you other clues too. What about physical changes? Have you noticed weight creeping on around your belly or hips? Are you dealing with the classic hot flashes or night sweats? But also, what about things you might not even think are related, like aching joints or thinning hair? Yep, those can be clues too. But let's be real, symptoms can be confusing. And what if you don't even have periods anymore? Maybe because of a hysterectomy. How are you supposed to track that? That's exactly why clue number 2, the lab work, is so incredibly helpful. It can be an absolute game changer. And this is actually pretty amazing. Just one simple blood test for a hormone called FSH can give you a surprisingly clear snapshot of where you are. Just look at this table. It's a simple relationship. As your FSH level goes up, your ovarian reserve is going down. See that last line? Once your FSH is over 30, that's considered a definite sign you're in menopause. Okay, so once you've used your symptoms and maybe some lab work to figure out your location on the map, you can start looking at your toolkit. Because there are a lot of things you can do to make this whole journey way smoother.
And this graph right here, this is the why behind it all.
This explains why certain treatments are used at certain times. Just follow those 2 lines. See the green line for progesterone? It takes this massive nosedive way before the estrogen line even starts to dip seriously. And that is exactly why treatment often starts with progesterone first.
But before we get into the toolkits, there's a really critical point we need to make. When we talk about replacing progesterone, we're talking about bioidentical progesterone. That means it's molecularly the exact same as the stuff your own body makes. This is not the same as the synthetic versions, called progestins, that you find in some older HRT or birth control. That's a different molecule, and some studies have linked it to different risks. So this distinction is huge.
So let's look at the toolkit for that very first stage, early perimenopause. Here the focus is really on building a strong foundation. We're talking about lifestyle stuff, diet, exercise, maybe some targeted supplements. In some cases, a doctor might also recommend a low dose of that bioidentical progesterone to help with those early signs, especially trouble with sleep.
All right, so when you move into late perimenopause, you take that foundational toolkit and you build on it. Remember that graph with the progesterone line falling off a cliff? Well, this is the stage where a doctor might introduce oral micronized progesterone to directly counteract that drop. And honestly, for things like sleep and mood, it can be an absolute game changer.
Then, once you've hit that 1-year mark and you're officially in postmenopause, your estrogen levels are now consistently low. And so, the toolkit expands again. This is when adding estrogen and sometimes even testosterone to the mix becomes an option. This helps manage a whole new set of symptoms and really helps protect your long-term health.
And then finally, way down the road in late postmenopause, the conversation starts to shift a little bit. Hormones can definitely still play a role, for sure, but the main focus really turns to long-term health, thinking about protecting your bones and your cardiovascular system for the decades to come.
So there you have it. You've got the map of the journey, you've got the clues to find your own location, and you have an idea of the toolkit that's available. Really, the whole point of this is to empower you with knowledge, because when you understand what's happening in your own body, you can walk into your doctor's office and have a totally different kind of conversation, a confident, informed one about your own health and your own journey.